think the power to really listen to people, it gives you just so much, not just knowledge, but it humbles you, and it's a kind of skill that I don't think we cultivate enough. We're always feeling like we're pressured or authorized to express ourselves, and that contributes to a real lack of empathy that we have for other people. So listening is key.
You try so hard, hoping that one day something gon' change.
So I'm so excited to talk to my friend, Dr. Jacqueline Stewart, who is the Chief Artistic and Programming Officer for the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures. And so Jackie is, one of the curators of this extravaganza. She is a film scholar, a tenured professor at the University of Chicago, a film archivist, the founder of the Southside Home Movie Project. She's the first Black host of Turner Classic Movies' Silent Sunday Nights. And she's a MacArthur Genius Award winner in the class of 2021. So with all that, this conversation is gonna be fabulous. I'm so excited.
I grew up in Hyde Park, which, as we know, a lot of Southsiders be like, that's not the South Side. That's where I grew up. And so I would say that, like, the fact that I had a family all around the South Side, primarily in Chatham, in Princeton Park, and then I had the advantages of living in Hyde Park, which meant I went to Bret Harte School, I went to Kenwood Academy schools in the mix of Chicago public schools, still, that was huge for me. It grounded me in a really strong understanding of not just like the needs of folks living across the South Side of Chicago, but then also like how I could learn and grow and be a part of the solution. Like that was always the way that my mother raised me and my sister. I always loved movies, grew up watching a lot of old movies with my aunt Connie at 9213 South Harvard. That's what we do every night. Stay up really late and watch these old black and white movies and then talk about them during the commercials. It's a very bonding experience. And, aunties are very special. Those of us who have had aunties who spend that kind of time with us, it's just really, really precious. I was always interested in the history of Black filmmakers. And I learned about this man, Oscar Micheaux, when I was an undergrad, Black filmmaker. I felt a real connection to him because he started his company in Chicago in the late 19-teens. This is a man who made over 40 films between 1918 and 1948, completely independent filmmaker. So that's an incredibly captivating story. Like, how could a Black man be making movies completely outside of Hollywood, make that many? And then I started doing research on him, especially looking at the Chicago Defender, looking at microfilm. That's what we did before the digital resources were available. And I just got completely enamored with the Black world that I saw laid out in the pages of the Chicago Defender, because you had all these stories about what was happening socially, politically. You had these entertainment pages that were laying out all of these performers who were in these theaters, all along where now the IIT campus is. This was like a row of vaudeville theaters and movie theaters, jazz performances. It just kind of I've always been interested in when you look at a place and you imagine what had been happening there before. In the study of film history, we tend to focus on, narrative films, theatrical films, things that people think about as like normal movies. But the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of films that have been made have not been made for theaters. Like if you think about, there have been training films, educational films you see in school, films for, when people would join the military, they will watch these films to train them. There are scientific films. And home movies is also like a huge body of filmmaking that scholars are turning their attention to. So there's so much of it, in fact, that there were some local efforts in different parts of the country to kind of collect home movies and study them. So I was like, well, let's just see what kind of films do people have on the South Side of Chicago. And that first summer, 2005, I was working with a group of students and we put some flyers around. And then it was like a deluge of material. Like people have this stuff in their attics and their basements. And most of the time, people don't have projectors anymore, or they don't work, or they don't know how to use them. And they might have these reels, you know, somebody's parent passes away or grandparent. It's like, I've got all this stuff. What can I do with it? So I wanted to create a place to share it. So we digitized the films for free for people. And then we did a ton of screenings, and it was amazing, Darlene, like people watching other people's home movies, and they'd be like, oh, I remember that, you know, whatever, the green CTA buses, the green limousine, or buildings that no longer stand are still in this footage. Bud Billiken Parade, right? Like 1963. Or just watching a baby kind of like toddling around. Folks are like, oh, versus watching other people's home movies was just like moving to people. It was definitely moving to the family members themselves who had donated the footage. And as I say all the time, like it's one thing to see a picture of your grandmother who has passed. When you see a film of her and she's walking around, like it's just, it brings people back, and it connects people like emotionally to their personal history. And then part of what I'm kind of arguing with this project is that those personal histories are what make up like the official larger histories, that like everyday life, the way people dress, the way they decorate their homes, the way people move, you know, there's cultural specificities in that are really valuable and that need to be taken into account. So it's just been like a magical project, and I'm grateful for the amazing team, Justin Williams and Sabrina Craig, who work on it with me, and all the colleagues at Arts and Public Life at the University of Chicago who are keeping it going, but mostly to the families who trusted us to share their footage with this project. Yeah, you know, I was really fortunate to co-curate a box set of early Black films that Kino put out. It's called Pioneers of African American Cinema. It's a 5-disc set. Now I'm doing an infomercial, Darlene. Anyway, it is really fantastic. But in the publicity stuff around the Pioneers box set, I was invited to go on to Turner Classic Movies. They were gonna do 2 nights of films, these early Black films. And I was on and I was like, man, this is fun. It's fun. I like talking about this stuff to this audience. And the TCM people really liked it too. Like, oh, you're really great. You know, you break these things down in a way that's so accessible and so on. So we stayed in touch, and then they invited me to become one of the hosts, which was just incredible. Something I never could have like deliberately tried to do. But it's been great. And then, you know, they've had this show, Silent Sunday Nights, ever since the network has been on the air, but it never had a dedicated host. So it was like the perfect slot. I really try to make sure that we always have, you know, race films in the mix. The silent era is also really important, because I don't know how many people recognize it. There were a lot of women directors in the very early days of film. They get kind of like locked out of it as filmmaking becomes consolidated in Hollywood. But that's a period where you can really highlight the work of a diverse and global range of filmmakers. This is a brand new museum. It just opened September 30th. And he was inviting me to be a part of the leadership team to like launch this new institution. So did I ever expect that I'd be sitting in Los Angeles right now? Like, no, not at all. But it really, Darlene, I think you have tapped it. Like, if this was an opportunity to share film history with like the scope of this kind of audience, you know, I mean, we're expecting millions of people to come through the Academy Museum, and to do it in an environment where you have direct access to the filmmakers. I mean, this is a museum that is, you know, like a project of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, which has 17 branches of all the different crafts of filmmaking, and all of those craft areas have informed the way that we represent things in our gallery. So the costume designers are, you know, directly involved with how we narrate the history of costume design. Ruth Carter is a member of our, you know, branch task force and worked with us on the Eveline costume that you talked about. We had to reconstruct the crown for that costume. Her Okoye costume from Black Panthers in the galleries, you know. hair and makeup artists, casting directors, production designers, like to have the opportunity to really talk with these film artists about what they do, how they do it, and to then teach audiences about that. Like, what's the real work of making films? I mean, it's just an unprecedented opportunity. And I'm really, glad that I just like took the leap. R2-D2 and C-3PO are in there. So, like, literally, E.T. We have the ruby slippers from The Wizard of Oz. We have Rosebud from Citizen Kane. We have a part of the galleries that's focused on Oscar Michaud, and that was already in the works before I came on board. This is the thing that I have to say, people often think, because there's so much relating to people of color who've made films, Latinx filmmakers, Asian filmmakers, Black filmmakers, and they assume I brought all that, but I did not. I took the job because that stuff was already in the works. Well, we are talking just before the holidays. My family watches It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas Eve. I love that movie. I love Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust.
I knew you were going to say that one.
Very much. I love Cheryl Dunier's film, The Watermelon Woman, which was just named to the National Film Registry this year, which I'm really proud to be a part of that. I love All About Eve, the Betty Davis movie. It's such a good movie. Mildred Pierce. I love film noir. That's one of my favorite ones. I love Killer of Sheep by Charles Burnett. Brilliant film, really moving. Yeah, those are some of my faves. We'll see, I mentioned Daughters of the Dust. That's really at the top of the list for me. Yes, because it was actually shot with all natural lighting, like no artificial light, all sunlight. And one of the big issues for us has been how Black skin is represented on film, because actually film was not made, Kodak was not made for Black people. Like, it was really made to capture white skin tones. So when you look at some of these films, you see that, like, you can't really light Black people and white people together in a way that in these early days. Now with digital technologies, people can do more. So for Daughters of the Dust, the whole attention of how it is filmed is based on rendering the range of Black skin tones in a beautiful way. That's just a radical move. Dee Reese's film, Pariah, which is another one of my favorite films, like the coming of age, coming out story about a young Black woman in Brooklyn. The cinematographer Bradford Young also does remarkable things with Black skin and lighting. So that's another film that I just find to be totally captivating. I have a strong work ethic. And I don't even know if I would have been able to say that 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It just felt so natural to me. But now it's like, oh no, that was actual labor that you put in consistently. I think that's a thing I now recognize. And then listening. I've always found it to be more valuable to listen than to talk. And even though I give lectures and lead meetings and host a TV show, for me, the most valuable things, and this is why I love doing interviews with artists and other people. Oral histories, that's a mode I've used for a lot of my research. I think the power to really listen to people, it gives you just so much, not just knowledge, but it humbles you, and it's a kind of skill that I don't think we cultivate enough. We're always feeling like we're pressured or authorized to express ourselves, and that contributes to a real lack of empathy that we have for other people. So listening is key.